Okay, this is notes for the caretaker. The person who is taking care of the patient who just had surgeries, not feeling good, that kind of thing. A lot of us are already familiar with that. Not a big deal. But there's some that just have no clue what to do. They're kind of like lost. And we kind of had that situation. On the most part, as a mother, I've raised 4 kids, husband, all that kind of good stuff. And so taking care of somebody wasn't a big deal. But what happened to Michael recently threw me for a loop, and I had no idea what I was doing, how to solve this. It was a whole new spectrum of what was going on, so I was a little bit panicky. But first rule of all of it is to relax and just take it one step at a time, because that's all you really can do. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There are going to be a lot of questions. There has been so many changes in the hospital, healthcare, all kinds of stuff. Since I was a kid, never mind since I raised my kids, there was a lot of new things. There was this guy that came in, and we had to do computer stuff to figure out how to take care of Michael's care on the computer. I didn't know that. And so I had to have Michael and Gabby help me out with that one, because I had no idea what that was all about. You have to remember to think for the patient. The patient is so medicated or so sick, they cannot comprehend what's going on, really. And so they need someone to step up for them and say, okay, what about this? What's going on with that? Ask those questions, because chances are they'll probably forget the answer before whoever gave you that answer left the room, which has happened quite often. Keep a lot of notes on, like if you're staying at the hospital. Gabby handed up, the nurses had this spot on the door. They had this metal strip, and they would stick a piece of paper in it, and they would write down what was going on with Michael in there. Well, since Gabby and I were staying in the room with Michael the whole time, there was stuff going on that the nurses obviously did not know about. We did not want to mess up their paperwork, so we put a second piece of paper next to it. And so when anything went on in the room, we would write down the time and what took place at that time. And it's kind of annoying when you have to write down that somebody went to the bathroom, what it looked like. It is that annoying sometimes. If they had something to eat, what was it? We even got to the point where we took notes on what the staff was doing. We had our own little notebook that we were hiding over here, and we wrote down our notes, because it was clear that sometimes communication didn't happen with the staff. And there was one medication that Michael was given, and come to find out he had an allergic reaction to it. And then they thought, hey, let's give this to him again. Bad idea. So we got to the point where, we would ask for something, we'd write down the fact that we asked for it. When we received it, we write down that we received it. Michael did something, ate something or whatever, we would write that down. The nurse said or did something, we would write that down, just to keep a running record of what happened. Quite often, while you're staying at the hospital, it seemed like almost every day when Michael was there, somebody from the hospital staff would come in and say, well, we're from such and such a department, and we're checking up to make sure that you're getting the care that you need, that you're happy with the services, everything's going on, is everything great? Normally we're not picky people, so it's like life is beautiful, we can deal with this. We did, however, end up with a couple of nurses that were a problem, and we pretty much made it clear that we did not want to ever see that nurse in the room again. And just for your information, that's happened at my doctor's office. The office that I go to, with the way my medical insurance is set up, you go in and you may not see the same doctor every single time. You may get this one or that one or the other one. And it got to the point where there was 2 doctors. out of that group that I don't want to ever see in my room again. Not when they're talking about Russian mafia, and not when they're not paying attention to what I'm telling them. So, yes, we don't go there. So if you have somebody who's coming into the room who's not doing their job or making your life miserable while you're there, you know, it is okay to say, I don't want to deal with this person. Can you get someone else for me? As a caretaker, bring something to keep you occupied while you're staying with the patient, especially at the hospital or something like that. You're going to have hours. You know, the patient's going to be sleeping. There's not a whole lot to do. Go ahead and bring something that'll keep you occupied, be it a computer with the headphones so you don't wake them up, a video that you can watch on your computer, books, projects, whatever. But keep in mind, you know, again, just like with a patient, you don't want something that's going to have you so involved that you can't tear yourself away from it. You want to be able to drop it in at a moment's notice and pick it up and wherever. Because when the patient wakes up, obviously you got to see what they want and take care of whatever the issue is at the time, or deal with the medical staff. So, but it's just kind of keep you occupied. I brought my sewing, I brought my crocheting, I brought my computer with all kinds of projects that I had to do. I brought my Kindle so I could just play a game on it. We had, I don't know about the hospitals where y'all going to be at, and whoever's watching this, but the hospital that we stayed at had awesome Wi-Fi in the rooms, so it wasn't a big deal to get on the computer, except for one room. There was one room where I'm walking up and down the hallway trying to get the internet to come in. It wasn't happening for me. It would happen with my Kindle, but it wouldn't happen with my laptop. I don't understand what that was about. But yes, have something to keep you occupied. Also, you might want to bring your own bedding, you know, your own blankets and your own pillows, and something that's really warm. When I stayed at the hospital, there's a cold air that comes in through the window. Even though the window is one big piece of glass and it doesn't open at all, there was a lot of cold air coming in there, and it just froze me. And so I had like 6 hospital blankets, and it didn't do me any good. And I finally put my coat on over the blankets, and then I was warm. So it's just something to cut off that breeze would be great. Another biggie is just take care of yourself. Bring what you need. Depending on where the patient is, depends on whether or not you can use the shower, or if you're going to have to go home, you know, trade off with somebody so you can go home and take a shower. When the kids were younger, I would stay with the kids, and then my husband, when he had a chance, he'd come in and stay with the kids while I ran off and took a shower, took a nap, whatever I needed to, and then come back and felt a little bit more refreshed. Do the same, you know, for yourself. Just find a way to help yourself to relax, even if it's just going for a walk in the hallway to get away from the patient, because sometimes the patients can be a little bit hard to deal with. And if you're going to stay at the hospital, tell the nurses, I'm going to be staying in the room. Could you bring me a bed? Don't be surprised they roll in a chair. These chairs full, you know, are recliners, or they're the kind of chair that folds out into a bed. There's different kinds, but just be prepared for that. I one time even resorted to having a air mattress. You know, the room was huge, so it wasn't a big deal. But I had an air mattress that I would have prepared. And during the day, I would put the bed up along the wall so it was out of the way. And then at night, when I was ready to go to sleep, I would put the bed back down on the floor and put all my blankets on there and that kind of thing. So if you're going to be staying overnight in the hospital, at least try to make sure you're somewhat comfortable. But I will warn you, those hospital chairs are just not the most comfortable thing. If you're going to be having a long stay, you might get yourself a small cooler or something that you can plug in. Sometimes the hospitals will have a refrigerator that you can give them the food to put in there, but have a food supply for yourself, because buying hospital foods is not always healthy, and it can end up being pretty expensive, especially when you're asking for 2 or 3 meals a day. The room service, it was $8, and then they had a set menu of, I want this or I want that, and it was a lot of food, and I bought one meal and it lasted me almost all day. It was just that much food. Something to consider, but your food supply might be something that you want to think about, but you also have to keep in mind, if the patient has a food restriction, you don't want to have stuff that they can't have in the room. You don't want to be sitting there eating a cheeseburger when they're restricted to liquids or something like that. Try to be mindful of that. If need be, leave the room, have your food, and then come back into the room and eat, all well fed and everything. Or have someone sit in the room with them while you go get something to eat. That's, Michael's case, he couldn't even have a glass of water, so I was refusing to even drink water while I was in there, and yours truly kind of ended up dehydrated. It was be very patient with the patient. Be understanding of the fact that the patient is medicated, they're in pain, they're in a place they don't want to be. They're at the hospital. Nobody wants to be in a hospital. Whatever it is they want isn't happening when they want it. They're not understanding when people talk to them what's going on with them. So you need to be understanding for the patient that stuff's just going on, and when they start to feel better, you can explain it to them gently that this is what's going on. Just keep in mind that they're not feeling too hot, and it's going to affect how they're going to behave. Know who to call when you have a problem. You might have a sort of a list, but it's one of those certain situations that go on with the patient. It's like, okay, just call the nurse, they'll take care of it, not a problem. This is a bigger situation, like Michael ended up with an infection, they couldn't figure out what it was, come to find out he had an IV in his neck and ended up with a staph infection from that IV. And then they gave him medication to fight that, and come to find out he was allergic to the medication, or at least he had a negative reaction to it. Called the doctor. So you got your nurse, you got your doctor, so those are the first defense type of things. As it gets bigger, who else would you call? Would you call your mom, call dad, call the patient's spouse, whoever? When Gabby was at the hospital, I was the emergency number to call, and whatever had to be done, I just went in, took care of it, all was good. So sometimes, if your communication skills need some help, you might have that extra person be a good person as a go-between, who's good at their communications and understand both sides of the story. I was able to understand where the nurse and the doctor were coming from. I understood where these two were coming from and how to close in the gap so that everybody understood what the other one was saying. So you might have somebody of that aspect to help you out. For a long stay, if it's a short stay, computer or a book, little project, something to keep you occupied. If you have a longer stay and the patient's up to it, you can have like an Xbox or a PlayStation. The hospital that we stayed at, you could connect the stuff to the TVs. The TVs had plug-ins, so you can plug everything in. So they had that, and because they had that, they were able to play videos, they were able to play games, they were able to watch our Netflix. I have Netflix, Michael knew about that, so he had his PlayStation there. He was able to pull up our Netflix account and watch those instead of whatever was on TV. So, and it made him a lot happier to be able to watch that. Watch some really weird stuff too. And they do, at least our hospital had Wi-Fi, so that made life a whole lot easier.